This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den. And welcome into episode number 102 here on the Huskies Warming House Podcast. Myself, Noah Grant, joined alongside, as always, by Nick Maxson at the Puck Scribe on Twitter. Nick, a lot of fun things to talk about. We are ramping up, getting closer and closer to tournament time. We're going to talk, obviously, some men's hockey. A good weekend, I think, overall for them against Duluth, securing home ice. We're going to talk a little bit about some Minnesota Wild action as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit of some extra ice stuff about the regional tournament. Should the regionals stay the way that they are? Should there be some changes? We'll discuss that and have a look around the college hockey world in general. So you won't want to miss it. And we'll start, as always, with Center Ice View News and Notes and the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup. Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to centericeview.com.
And in the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup here, Noah. Again, going into this weekend, Lloyd was saying there was a chance, and the Huskies took it, and they ran with it on the road against Duluth. They got it done against the Bulldogs, pushing Friday to overtime. It was a 3-2 loss. However, a critical point that was grabbed in the standings that kept the total at 3. Needed to get home ice, and then again on Saturday, a 2-0 shutout for the Huskies at Amsoil Arena. And how about this for irony? Renneker's third shutout of the season, making 34 saves, number 34. So that's kind of fun. But, honestly, what a nice fitting way for David Renneker to finish off his regular season career with the Huskies with a 34 save shutout. So congratulations to David, and also securing home ice here for the Huskies. SCSU 1 for 5 on the power play, so not as good on special teams, at least on the offensive side of it. But that's all right, because 5-on-5 play was much better this weekend. Duluth scored, however, 3 power play goals, so the penalty kill maybe a little bit of a question mark going into this next weekend.
No, they
scored
once
because
on 3
can't
tries.
Read. Once on 3 tries.
I was gonna say
it's Sunday morning, folks. So, oh my goodness gracious,
that'd be scary if all 3
that would be very scary.
On the weekend.
Let's try reading the next one, right? So, Huskies were 52 for 99 on the face-off dot, so 53% in between the circles. Outshot by 15 on the weekend. However, again, one of those stats, Noah, that unless you really break it down as to where those shots are coming from, not totally concerned. I know on Saturday night, a lot of the shots coming from the perimeter, so not a lot of great chances for a UMD.
Did you just mention that as a Huskies fan you might not be concerned? Can we write that down? That someone should copy that and then send it to a fan base. Anyway,
I know, right? Finishing 18-12-4 overall on the season. 5th hardest strength of schedule. This was a topic we discussed before October and how this would be quite the gauntlet for the Huskies. 10-10-4 in conference play. Again, the NCHC, the top 6 teams. As we had kind of talked about, we're good this year. 11-3-3 at home, 7-9-1 on the road. So you talk about how the importance of home ice could be for St. Cloud. There's your answer right there. Much better at home than they are away. So after you just get done playing the Bulldogs, guess what? We're back at it again Friday, Saturday, and maybe Sunday. Again, it's a best of 3 series for the first round of the NCHC playoffs. For the other series out there, number one Denver taking on number 8 Miami. You can really tell that I am struggling this morning. My goodness. Number 2, North Dakota does get number 7, Colorado College. Western Michigan then gets Omaha to wrap up the NCHC first round. Again, the home teams, Denver, North Dakota, and Western Michigan.
Yeah, and interesting to see. You mentioned David Rennick and the success that he had at the tail end of his regular season. Thought he's been good all year. Actually earned an assist as well on the weekend on one of the goals too. So kind of cool to see him get on the column in terms of points. Speaking of columns that will earn points for nobody, the IIHF has banned Russia and Belarus from international hockey until further notice. The federation will also move the 2023 juniors, World Juniors, to a different location after Russia was supposed to be the host for that event. And the ban also keeps Russia and Belarus out of any of the upcoming tournaments. A lot of multiple major international events, the 2022 Worlds coming up in May, the U18 tournament for the women's side, and the rescheduled 2022 World Juniors that are taking place this August. Russia was also slated to host the 2023 World Hockey Championship in May, but the IIHF has yet to kind of make a decision on that too. So I honestly think it's probably a good move. It's kind of staying pat with what we're seeing in leagues around the world. I think, as we've seen, also kind of in terms of players, like CCM is not promoting, for example, Alex Ovechkin worldwide. I have a little bit of a different opinion on that. I'm not as big of a fan on the personal side of things for people that just happen to be Russian. It's kind of, in my opinion, it's like taking an American when the war was going on in Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan and not promoting them because they haven't commented on that. I know it's not a perfect comparison, but seems a little bit different to me in that particular perspective. But nonetheless, those things are going on, and we are obviously keeping tabs on that as well. But speaking of Russian players, kind of a tough story coming out of this. Ivan Miroshnichenko, top prospect in the upcoming NHL draft. He was recently diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma at just 18 years of age, currently receiving treatment as well in Germany. He could miss all of next season, why is that a big deal, Nick? He's been projected to go near the top of the 2022 NHL draft, rating between 2 and 6 on most draft boards. So, but he was told his Hodgkin's lymphoma is the most common form. It's a cancer of the lymphatic system for people who don't know, and is curable from what they have told him for his diagnosis. So hopefully he's able to recover and move on from that. But just some really tough timing in terms of the draft stock. We've seen a couple of players that have kind of fit that bill, not so much with cancer, obviously, but just with particular injuries or ailments that come right at draft time that can affect your draft stock, but then also means that a team might get a diamond in the rough for a player that should have been maybe a top 5 or top 10 prospect, and they pick them up in the later stages of the draft. So we'll have to keep our eyes on it as we move forward. Maybe even the Chicago Blackhawks would get him, Nick, everybody's favorite. Right?
I know, right? We definitely do wish them the best of luck moving forward with that. Definitely not a fun, piece of medical news anybody gets. We know that many people in our listening area, as well as outside of the world, whether you're directly or indirectly affected, it's not fun. So we hope the best for him as he moves forward in his journey through that battle. Speaking of Chicago, right now, finally selected a GM, Kyle Davidson, 10th one in team history. He served as the interim general manager since October. He's not very old at age 33, so he's younger than me. Oh, goodness. Youngest general manager in Blackhawks history. Has been with the organization since 2010 in a variety of capacities, when promoted to assistant general manager in 2019. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that. He's already made a couple of moves as far as letting some people go from what some would say is the old regime, but to me, personnel changes are me to kind of minor things. I'm really curious as to see as to what sort of response he will have, especially with the fallout from the Kyle Beach scenario. I think that's where all the hockey eyes will be on.
Yeah, certainly don't envy him right
now.
No,
that's quite the mess to clean up, and hopefully that he can get that done sooner than later. In milestone news, head coach Peter DeBoer for the Vegas Golden Knights, 500th game coach in the NHL. Oddly enough, how about this? 3-1 win that came against the former team he coached. That's the San Jose Sharks. And again, before that, Pete DeBoer also head coaching the New Jersey Devils. So he's been around the league a little bit. Another one, how about Nick Schmaltz of the Arizona Coyotes? 7 points in an 8-5 win over. That's 8, Noah. 2 goals, 5 hits. I'm just making sure because usually Arizona scores 8 goals in like 4 games.
Yeah,
maybe
well,
5.
You just put Nick Schmaltz on your top line, and that's what happens. Simple game plan.
That?
Hey, he's a former Fighting Hawk, Nick. Come on.
I know I should have more respect, holy cow. But that's a heck of a pro. That's a heck of a out in the NHL. 7 points. Not many players can tout that for a single game. So congratulations to him. That's actually quite the feat. How about this? Kind of a trade, a little bit minor league trade. Minnesota Wild trading. Former Wild netminder Alex Stalock sent from Edmonton to San Jose for future considerations. Hopefully he gets a shot. I think he will. Coming up again, some of the medical conditions he has.
He's been practicing in the AHL for the past couple of weeks, and he's been playing in a couple of games. His save percentage isn't great, but it's been about a year and a half since he's played. Kind of notable because, of course, Alex Stalock really kind of his future kind of started actually with the San Jose Sharks is where he really kind of got his first shot. And it's more because San Jose is really struggling with some goaltending depth right now, and Edmonton isn't. I say isn't in quotations in terms of being healthy. The AHL depth for San Jose can use a goaltender and a veteran netminder at that. So part of the reason for that move, and hopefully at 34 years of age, you hope that he can get another shot and stay healthy. We've seen what happened, obviously, with the Tuukka Rask situation and Alex Stalock's condition. I don't want to say it's worse, but myocarditis is definitely an added challenge to try to come back from. So wishing him the best, and always loved when he was in a Wild uniform and skating at 100 miles an hour above the top of the circles, trying to play pucks all the time. So
no kidding. So yeah, definitely hope to see him back. That'd be a great story for him. And then lastly, some injury news around the National Hockey League. Washington's Anthony Mantha was active from LTIR, and Winnipeg's Nikolai Ehlers returning after missing 19 games. San Jose's Mario Ferraro will miss 6 to 8 weeks to repair a fractured fibula after he fell feet first into the board. So again, it's one of those scenarios where, I think to the casual fan, it looks kind of innocent, but again, when you're going so fast, then you hit an immovable object, something's got to give. And unfortunately, this was kind of a similar thing to what happened with Curtis Foster of the Minnesota Wild, breaking the leg going in for the icing call. One of the reasons they switched it to sort of that early no-touch icing, and then it is for player safety. So hope that he can recover, get back in, because San Jose definitely needs some depth on their blue line and in their lineup in general.
And welcome into episode number 102 here on the Huskies Warming House podcast. Noah Grant alongside Nick Maxon. Nick, it's been a pretty eventful week in the game of hockey. A lot of exciting things in the college hockey world, a lot more upsets than I think we had anticipated. I have the pairwise pulled up. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but let's start, first of all, with how you're doing, Nick. I know the reading glasses are not exactly functioning fully for you this morning, but other than that, how are you doing on this Sunday morning?
Doing all right. With the Huskies winning yesterday, now everybody's in overdrive. We talked how the series against Colorado College may have been the last one that I broadcast for Husky Productions, and the math was okay, but it wasn't a favorable situation for the fans. Really thought that UMD would take care of business, and they did not. So that means essentially this morning at 6 o'clock, my phone's been exploding because we are trying to schedule things for interviews and getting content created for this upcoming weekend series that could span 3 games. And it's exciting that I get at least 2 more games there behind the desk. And luckily it'll be a playoff type atmosphere. And so, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, but yeah, it's going to be a busy week for sure.
Don't mess it up, as they say. I believe you're actually heading into, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually spring break for St. Cloud this week, which
there's no such thing.
It's not going to feel like a break for you.
No,
but
it never has, honestly.
Yeah, well, my break comes the next week, but I bring that up for a specific point, and you and I haven't discussed this pre-show, so we're going to wing it on the air here. But my thought process is it is a 3-game series, like Nick mentioned, for the men's hockey team, so I'm going to guess that our show time for the regular show potentially might change and maybe come out a little bit later, depending on if we go to 3 games or not. So just keep your eyes and ears peeled. We'll have it all for you either Sunday, Monday, or at the latest early Tuesday morning, and we'll have that all rocking and ready to go for you. Speaking of things that are not rocking and not rolling at all, we're going to jump over to our trivia question here, Nick, and it did read, while the Minnesota Wild beat Philadelphia on Thursday, they lost the other night in Buffalo, and everyone is not happy. In lieu of this, what number of games is the longest losing streak in Minnesota Wild history, and what season was it? Don't expect you to get the season, but how many games is the longest losing streak in Minnesota Wild history? Might surprise you if you haven't seen this one.
Oh, geez, I know it's longer than people think. I'm pretty sure, and I haven't seen this one. Is it, I want to say, is it 7 games?
It's 6 games.
6 games.
Which I thought that was less than what I anticipated. I figured there would have been an 8 or 9 game streak somewhere in there, and it's only happened one time. So Tanner Heath was our winner. Shocker. The Wild have lost 4 games in a row 11 times in franchise history, including this season. 5 times have they lost 5 games in a row in franchise history, but only once have they lost 6 games in a row, from December 19th, 2013 until December 31st of the same year in 2013-14. So we talked about the alarm bells going off a little bit for St. Cloud State as of late, jumping to number 7 in the pairwise. But the Minnesota Wild, if they had a pairwise, I mean, they have standings, the alarm bells are in full effect for the Minnesota Wild faithful. Nick, I mean, they've only won 1 game in whatever it is, their past 6 or 7, something like that. And it has not been pretty. Dropping a late lead against Buffalo, one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League, the other night. Mm-hmm. Is this Minnesota Wild team as bad as people say it is? Should the panic button, are we going down to DEFCON 1 already? Are we at that point? Or are we still kind of like, okay, we're not healthy? Or are the Wild truly not playing good? Are they not a good hockey team right now?
There's multiple layers to this question. So I know that, the goals against have not been great. That certainly is cause for concern. Now, do you attribute that to the injuries that we have? Do you attribute that to, team play? The positives is that we're still scoring. That's the good news. So if we were still giving up 5 to 6 goals a game and we're getting 1 or 2 goals, I'd be a little bit more concerned. But yeah, the loss of Matt Dumba has really hurt this squad. It certainly has.
Crazy how that works, huh?
I know, right? And I do think that has really goofed up the chemistry. You don't have Merrill and Kulikov together, who I think really have to be together to be an effective combo. Kalen Addison, as good as he has been at times, again, a bottom 6 role is not the role that he's built for. I think the one red flag with Kalen Addison, and yes, I'm going to get flack on this, is for a defensive core that isn't very big. That's I think the bigger question mark for the Minnesota Wild is, on D, and that's kind of where Matt Dumba does come into play. He's a bigger, sturdier defenseman. That he's got offensive upside, of course, but you forget that he's a big dude and he's actually not afraid to go in there and get his hands dirty in the corners in front of the net. And Kalen Addison just doesn't play that type of game. So they're really missing some physicality in the back end. And again, with those line combinations kind of in shambles, we talked about this before, Noah, but with defensive pairings, the chemistry between those two is so imperative, especially in the National Hockey League, to be able to have effective breakouts, be able to go and chase a puck in the corner and know that your partner's got, say the weak side guy in front, and vice versa. So I do feel like a lot of it's injuries. Now, if Matt Dumba gets back, Jordan Greenway gets back, and we start to finally get to where these players are back to where they should be in the lineup, and we're still struggling, then I have some more question marks. But I do think it is giving Bill Guerin something to think about, because let's just say a certain TNT analyst said that depth was a problem. Unfortunately, for the way that the Wild have been playing, he's kind of being proven correct right now, is that, if we do have key injuries going down for the playoffs, there may be some struggles with this lineup. And that's something that it's got to be scratching the brain of Bill Guerin and wondering what he's got to do before the March 21st trade deadline.
Yeah, certainly some bright spots, though, even amidst a losing streak. I think the line of Gaudreau Boldy and Kevin Fiala has looked exceptional. Good to see them have chemistry. Ryan Hartman finding his scoring touch again. Kirill Kaprizov still continues to be good at hockey. And the other piece that's exciting, the Minnesota Wild do have the most games in hand of any team in the Central Division right now. So that's a good thing. And they're sitting in third place with 67 points, 32, 18, and 3 on the season. The next closest behind them is Nashville at 66 and Dallas at 65. Dallas, 1 game more that they played. Nashville with 2 games more that they played. And the Wild are 3 points out of St. Louis, who has played 1 more game as well, too. So Minnesota's 3-7 in their last 10. They've lost 1, obviously winning in Philadelphia. And then before that, they were on a 4-game losing streak. Their last win had came against Edmonton before losing 2 games prior to that at the tail end of what was a pretty good little winning streak for the Wild, besides their little fluffle against Winnipeg, so to speak. But standings wise, I mean, still looking okay, plus 29 in the goal differential. And I think the reason I bring that up is because, every team, it's pretty rare that it doesn't happen. I mean, most teams in the NHL have 1 or 2 skids over the course of a season. That's kind of a common thing. That's just the way it works over 82 games. Minnesota is having theirs right now, and they're not playing their best hockey, so to speak, but they're still standing pat in the standings, which I think is an important thing to point out because the skid hasn't cost them yet. Right. The play hasn't cost him yet in the standings. And I think there's a lot of discussion about this team won't make the playoffs. This team is not a playoff team. Yeah. If they lose their next 5, then I'm starting to get concerned. But I really, the Wild have 4 games this week. I mean, this is really kind of going to determine a little bit of the direction of where we're at as we kind of head into the trade deadline as well, too. I don't think it's time to push the panic button, like you said, because you are missing some key players. Now, do the Wild have to play better right now? Yes, definitely. I would 110% agree. Also, some just bad luck. I mean, how often is it that the Wild, one of the best defensive teams historically in the National Hockey League, blow a 1-goal hockey lead with under 5 minutes to play up in Buffalo the other night? You know what I mean? It's just sometimes when it's not your week, it's not your week, But like you mentioned, the Wild still scoring, giving up a lot of goals against teams that aren't very prolific on the offensive side too. So if you're Minnesota, you're moving forward. What is your next, how do you regroup from this? How do you get the boys reset, knowing that Greenway might not be back right away? Matt Dumba is still on the shelf. How do you get the guys reset? How do you find that chemistry? And how do you stop Minnesota Wild fans from driving their cars off cliffs?
Well, there's no way you can stop Minnesota Wild fans from driving off cliffs unless you win a Stanley Cup and you do it by winning 16 in a row and not losing a single game. That's pretty much what this fan base is really looking for. They want the path of least resistance. No, you effectively, it comes at a cost. Dean Evason wants this team to be, offense first. They want them to be driving pucks moving north. With that, and especially with defensemen being involved in that, right? This is something that Chicago did. Yes, I'm using Chicago reference in 2010, where essentially all 5 guys, could rotate in. They could cycle on the blue line instead of in the corner. Everybody's involved in the offense, and maybe you tell maybe we need to maybe ease back on that a little bit, or maybe just try to, be a little bit more down below the dots kind of thing. And where you're trying to not have the deep pinch as much. But then again, if you do that, you're taking away offensive opportunities. Maybe it's a system of where if you're in the D zone and, things are running ramp a little bit. That's the one thing I've noticed is that sometimes you get caught a little bit, too much extended time in your own zone and just unable to get things broken out. So penalties haven't, been terrible either. You just gotta stay the course, honestly. I know it's a cliche answer, but this team is okay. Again, I still think the injuries are a big part of what's happening. On the side piece is that, let's just say Dumba comes back 1 game and can't do it, and all of a sudden, the projections change for him, and now he's going to be out a lot longer than we anticipated. That might change things at the deadline. So I don't know. Again, I think you just stand pat, you stay course, and you fight through it. That's what teams do. You got to fight through these adversities. You have to understand that, you're going to have good stretches where they won 7, 8 in a row, then they lose 5, then you're doing okay and then you lose a little bit, that's fine. I still think they're playing okay, but you definitely need to take a little bit more of the details and the defenses and lock things down and try to prevent those grade A chances.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, like we talked about, a little bit kind of wait and see after this week and see if the Wild can kind of turn around. If they win 3 of 4 this week, I think everything kind of starts to balance itself out a little bit too. You're going to go through lulls in a season. Fortunately for us, this Wild team, especially in the first half, was pretty exceptional in the way that they were playing, and they've given themselves a chance, obviously, moving down the stretch here as we approach, what is it, about 25 games or so remaining for this hockey squad. So I believe they're at 53 games, so they should be at like 29 or something like that games left. So we're coming down the stretch into the final dog days of the season, so to speak. Speaking of the not dog days of the season, we are moving into playoff time for St. Cloud State hockey and the rest of the college hockey world. St. Cloud, let's start with their games, I should say, against Duluth this weekend. Had a 2-0 lead on Friday night. That one evaporated, losing in overtime by a score of 3-2. And then Saturday, a much better performance from what was actually a pretty good performance, I think, all things considered, on Friday night too, locking down the hatches in a 2-0 shutout win to secure home ice in the NCHC. Like you mentioned, Denver getting Miami, the 1-8 seed. North Dakota will have Colorado College, and Western Michigan and Omaha, which should be a good little battle in the 3-6 spot. Also joining the other teams in the Huskies, I should say, in the NCHC. But let's go back to St. Cloud. What did you like on Friday? What didn't you like on Friday? And same question for Saturday, your overall impression of the weekend.
Oh boy. For Friday, just inopportune penalties. That's what I didn't like. And even we could even say the same thing on Saturday, even though there was only 2. This team on Friday, really, I mean, they had a chance to kind of take care of business on Friday and really make Saturday a little bit easier for them. And you give up a 5-on-3 to give up the tying goal in the third period. So just, again, some undisciplined play at the worst possible times. And again, your penalty kill, not able to get the job done now, 5-on-3, that's a tall task. So I'm not dumb in that regards, right? But you still are putting yourself in a situation where you're making it harder than it has to be, especially when you have a lead in the third period. The last thing you want to do is give them any sort of momentum, any sort of advantage. And these are the sort of plays in the playoffs. These are season determining type decisions, right? So it's one of those where there's weight on these kind of things, right? So when we go forward with this, that's definitely I want to see cleaned up. Is there's offensive zone penalties that shouldn't be happening. Again, just having a little bit more of just the hockey awareness. Again, that you're up by 1, you don't need to go in and whether it's a boarding call or a stick lift or whatnot. Just make sure that you're in the right position, you're making the right play to avoid the referee having to make a call. But overall, I thought that they, persevered again through that. They were able to push it to OT, what they had to do. Saturday, much more complete game on Saturday. I thought that they were really good 5-on-5. I really liked the speed that they came out with. Now they settled back in as we got through the second half of that first period, but they didn't waver. Again, much better. At least in terms of puck security again on Saturday, and then taking care of some opportunities. Now, the one thing on Saturday, there's a couple of really just egregious turnovers in the defensive zone, a lot of them by freshmen. Lidke had one, Sulquist had one, Peart had one. So just, again, young kids, making sure that you're making that right decision, making sure that, you're not trying to do too much. And that way you're not, again, giving anybody a chance to kind of jump on an opportunity offensively against you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I really think that overall St. Cloud trending in a much better direction than they were a couple of weeks ago, as we talked about. Very important heading into playoff time, like we talked about as well. Best of 3 series in the NCHC starting at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday if needed. We don't have a start time for you as of yet. Still some more things to kind of be announced. So stay tuned with the St. Cloud State athletics website and the men's hockey website, and they'll have it all for you as well too. Kind of looking around the college hockey world, also the Huskies jumping to 7 in the pairwise, and there were some teams that needed to have big weekends that suddenly didn't have big weekends. The one that shocked me how much of a change there was, and I don't think any Huskies fans will complain about this one. The UMass Minutemen dropping both games against number 26 Boston College, who came in at much lower than 26. They dropped from 8 in the pairwise to 12. They are now on the bubble, on the fringe, with a couple of losses to BC. And a 4-3 loss for them on yesterday's contest on Saturday. I forget the score on Friday, but they dropped a game. Boston University dropping an 8-1 contest to Maine last night. It was kind of interesting as we were looking around some of the scores too. Omaha helping their case a little bit with a split against North Dakota. Notre Dame headed to game 3 today against Wisconsin. Wisconsin giving them fits in the Big Ten quarterfinal, as well as Penn State.
Could be huge.
Penn State and Ohio State have gone back and forth, and Ohio State has moved in the rankings for that one. They were sitting, I believe, it was at 13, and now they're at 15 with that split so far against Penn State. So today's game obviously going to be a big one too. So, I mean, you look around, Michigan Tech did what they had to do. They took care of Ferris State, a 3-2 score yesterday, and they're sitting now at 10th, so they've jumped up. Mankato had a bit of a scare against St. Thomas on Friday.
What a scare that was.
Yeah, a very good game. Rico Blasi looks very good swinging a hockey stick behind the bench. I'll just put it that way.
And I can't blame him for that, by the way.
I don't either. Yeah.
No, that's for the best game you played all year against the number 1 team. You're leading them after 2 periods to have a blatantly missed call. Any coach, and for those who will look at that situation and say, why is he acting like this? It's just a hockey game. When your team is playing the best they have all season, especially, for the road that St. Thomas has, this is your message that, hey, I've got your team's back. I'm standing up for you, especially when the call was very bad in terms of a non-call. Even Max would agree with this one. So, it's one of those where, it's a message being sent by the coach to your team that says, hey, you deserve this call. And because of the non-call, the game ended up being tied because of it. I can't say I would do anything differently for Rico. And again, where he has gotten this team from day one against St. Cloud to this, it's been quite impressive. I know we've talked about this in the MNCAA podcast with our friend Ryan Stieg. They've actually been my favorite story to follow this year. And although that we did expect Mankato to take care of us, this was certainly no cakewalk by any means. And really, you got to tip your cap to St. Thomas for putting in quite a show against the Mavericks this weekend, because that was really fun to see what they were at the start of the season to where they were at now, really taking the number 1 team to essentially the third period in game 1. And game 2 kind of got away from, but still that's a fantastic improvement from this team. It was really fun to watch.
Yeah, 3-2 score on Friday and 8-2 yesterday. Unfortunately, Mankato obviously getting the job done. A powerhouse sitting at number 1 in the pairwise. A couple other teams that had some motion as well too. A very good weekend for Northeastern, who jumped a couple spots. They're sitting in sole possession of 14. Had a very good weekend for them. Your favorite, Boston University, with that loss to Maine, dropping to 16 right now.
Wasn't my favorite, but just so we're aware. But yeah, how do you lose to Maine?
You don't score more goals than them, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the inside information. I'll take you to Vegas next time.
I don't think it's the fact that they lost to Maine. I think it's the fact that they gave up 8 against Maine. An 8-1 loss. That's tough.
That's tough.
Like we mentioned, Ohio State moving to that 15 spot. Sneaky good little weekend, a 1-0 victory yesterday. UMass Lowell moving from 16 to 13, so they might be making their case, depending on the way that some of these tournaments shake out. Minnesota Duluth has not budged. They are stuck at 11. I know a lot of people are kind of talking about them, if they have a poor showing in the NCHC playoffs, of them moving. I don't know. I really think they're saved by strength of schedule a little bit. Even if that scenario happens, I think that just and they're going to be exactly 500 in case that scenario happens. I have a tough time, unless there's a lot of upsets, I have a tough time seeing them getting bounced in the tournament. Now, winning 1 game in the best of 3 series could go a long way for Duluth. I would definitely throw that out there. But I would say Duluth is maybe the closest thing to a fringe team that you had. I think the top 10, I think Michigan Tech now is safe. I think the top 10 are probably going to be okay unless something crazy happens. And yeah, Duluth is maybe your first fringe team, so to speak, but UMass definitely put themselves on the bubble very quickly.
Yeah, they did. Yes, they did.
Very poor showing from them this week at the wrong time, trending in the wrong direction. So, Nick, college hockey world, We talked a little bit about the tournament. I think we're going to touch on that a little bit more after we get some more clarity coming on to some of the respective playoffs that are going on. So let's talk playoffs. Let's talk NCHC playoffs.
Yes.
Let's start with some predictions. How do you think the first couple of rounds are going to go and moving into the NCHC Frozen Faceoff?
So the first round, singular for those who are paying attention. Yes, I did have to get you on that. So Denver's got Miami. I think that's a sweep for Denver, unfortunately.
For Miami, right?
Yeah, exactly. A sweep right to the tee times. Unfortunately, it's just been that year for Miami. You know what? It's never fun, to talk about a team like that. It really isn't. It's been a struggle for Miami. And actually, last couple of weeks, they had some positive momentum, but just not enough, and just too little, too late for Miami. So it might be, just one of those deals where you play your 2, maybe 3 games if you can steal one. I just don't see that happening going on to Magnus Arena, and then you lick your wounds and you move on. And then you have North Dakota and Omaha. Omaha's given them fits. Excuse me. No, it's North Dakota, Colorado College. CC, as much as they definitely lack, especially speaking of depth, that's the one thing that CC really lacks is depth. That team is a much different team than we saw them last year. Again, under Mike Havland, this team was that trap team, the opportunistic team. This team's attacking. And you can see the style of play is different for them. I really, really like their head coach, Chris Ncaa. I know I mentioned that before. I think he's a fantastic human being. Getting the opportunity to chat with him before last weekend's series against the Tigers at the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. I think he's going to really turn that program around in a few years and give him some more talent into that pool. I think he's really going to make some strides with the program that I think at one point was quite almost the gold standard. When it comes to college hockey, not that long ago. So I think that's going to be, unfortunately for North Dakota, though, they will take care of business. I think that's a 2-0 series sweep. Now this is interesting. Western Michigan and then Omaha. Oh boy, Omaha. They've been playing better. Western just. These two teams love to be physical. They love to go north. I still think Western takes this in 2 games. That's just my prediction. I just think they're just too deep. I think Western's got too many offensive weapons, and I think Omaha will eventually run out of gas. And then we get to St. Cloud and Minnesota Duluth. This has got 3 games written all over it. I do see a 2-1 win for the Huskies coming on Sunday. And every single game will be by 1 goal because this is how the series goes. So,
yeah, kind of an interesting look. That would mean that coming into the NCHC Frozen Faceoff, they get reseeded based on their regular season finish. So number 1, Duluth would have number 4, St. Cloud State. Number 2, North Dakota would have number 3, Western Michigan. I'm going to throw my predictions out there as well. But Nick, in that scenario, Duluth, St. Cloud State, UND, Western Michigan, who goes all the way to?
No, that wouldn't work.
Yeah,
Minnesota, Duluth and St. Cloud.
Sorry, Denver. I meant Denver. Denver's 1. Okay, yeah. So Denver is 1. St. Cloud is 4. North Dakota is 2. Western Michigan is 3. Who takes the cake in the Frozen Faceoff?
Oof, I gotta say Denver. To me, I got my money on Denver. They're just
who do they play?
They're gonna play. I hate to say it, but they're gonna play North Dakota.
All right. TU over North Dakota. All right. So bracketology, so to speak, I think Denver does take care of Miami, like you mentioned, in the quarterfinal or the whatever you would call it, the first round of the playoffs. Number 2, North Dakota does take care of CC, although I wouldn't be necessarily shocked if CC is able to pull a game out of that series, a tight 2-1 finish in one of those. Like you mentioned, St. Cloud State in that 4 spot, I definitely agree, but I think that St. Cloud is going to end up playing North Dakota because I believe Nebraska Omaha is going to beat Western Michigan in the first round this year.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know Western Michigan had a very nice showing this weekend, obviously taking care of business like they needed to. I don't know. I feel something about this Nebraska Omaha team that they're just somehow like they're trending in the right direction. They had a pretty decent weekend against North Dakota. They've been playing pretty well as of late. Obviously gave the Huskies fits a couple weekends ago. I don't know. And I think there's a lot of extra, I don't want to say a lot of extracurricular, but there is some extracurricular distractions in Western Michigan, if you know what I mean, with things going on there too. I don't know how much it affects the playoffs, but I got to be honest. I feel like if there's one team that's maybe gonna, pull an upset, so to speak, I think UNO is maybe the team. Now Duluth beating St. Cloud, some would say, well, isn't that an upset? No, it's definitely not, because the two teams are just that close together. There is a bit of disparity between Western Michigan and Nebraska Omaha. I think UNO actually does win this series. So I think UNO gets Denver in the opening round of the Frozen Faceoff. North Dakota is going to get St. Cloud State. Denver is going to take that one. And I believe Denver's probably going to take the tournament. And I honestly think St. Cloud is going to beat North Dakota as well. I really think that it's going to be a tough time for North Dakota to take all of the games since the calendar year flipped over against the St. Cloud State Huskies. And I think St. Cloud is trending in the right direction and are going to be primed and ready after a very good battle with Minnesota Duluth. So I think Denver is going to beat St. Cloud State. And in unfortunately/fortunately typical fashion, St. Cloud is going to pull up that second place spot in the NCHC Frozen Faceoff Championship. So we'll have to see which one of us is going to be right. I know which one of us picked the safer option, and it wasn't me. So
fair enough.
So we'll have to see how that kind of shakes out as we're approaching the tail end of the regular portion of the show. Nick, we're going to talk about some regional stuff. We're going to talk about a little bit about the Big Ten tournament as well in the extra ice session. People gasp if you know what I mean. But as you kind of look around for St. Cloud State, is there anything else you wanted to touch on that you felt needs to be said when it comes to some St. Cloud State hockey as they prepare for their matchup against Minnesota Duluth in the Frozen Faceoff?
Pack the herb this weekend, if anything. Like, seriously, it's for the group of upperclassmen that you will likely lose, after this season, regardless. I don't see, and I'm gonna be straight out with this. I don't see Sam Hench's exercise in his COVID year. I just don't. I just don't. With the amount of talent that this team was going to lose, there really isn't an incentive for him to stay and continue his development. So I do think that he will move on to greener pastures after the season. So for those who want to see this, really good upperclassmen, class, and that is the fifth years, the grad transfers, and again, the normal 4-year seniors, get out and see them this weekend and support them. This team, especially led by this group of upperclassmen, has made St. Cloud State history. Get them to the national championship game last year. I still feel like, even though that there has been some, adversity for this squad, I do think that this team is battle tested and ready for the NCAA tournament. They know what it's like to get there. They know what it needs to win there. And I do feel like, again, they just need to get themselves their ticket punched. They've got a really good chance now with their pairwise standings. They can certainly help their case here this weekend, but go out and see these guys, go out there, support them. Let's make that building feel like a playoff atmosphere. Let's send this team out to, the NCAA tournament and the NCHC Frozen Faceoff in style. And let's do it with a booming, on the decibel meter there at the Herbrush National Hockey Center.
Yeah, fans in the Granite City getting some bonus hockey, so to speak. Didn't know. It wasn't looking very clear if we would have home ice a couple of weeks ago. The Huskies have done their job. Now go and support them. There's a reason that you want home ice, and that's for the crowd support. Doesn't mean anything if the crowd doesn't show up, right? So it should be a rocking and rolling atmosphere. And it's been a while, just in general, since we've had a playoff game in the Herbrush National Hockey Center, just based on how the past couple of years have gone. So like Nick mentioned, let's see a full building as always, and do it for Sam. Do it for Sam Hedges, as Nick said, and all the other players that fall in that bill. Another one that I would throw in there, obviously all the guys are great, but I mean, Kevin Fitzgerald too, right? Kevin Fitzgerald didn't know if he was going to be back, and just been a kind of a calm, cool, and collected leader, and the jovial jokester, as he always is, and a pretty good goal scorer, and even did pretty well in the faceoff dot the past couple of weekends too. So he's probably listening to our show, Nick. We're keying in on him and making Kevin Fitzgerald better day by day. But nonetheless, we're trying to make ourselves better day by day too. And it's not going so hot at the particular moment. But we're going to move on over to things that could be better, talking about the regional format in the NCAA playoffs. And welcome into the Extra Ice Session, episode number 102 here on the Huskies Warming House podcast. Nick Maxon to my left or right, depending on however you're listening or viewing or whatever you're doing. Myself, Noah Grant, on the other side of whatever you're listening, viewing, or doing. Nick, we're going to talk a little bit about the Big Ten tournament first. We're going to start with that small one. Is it weird to you?
That sounds funny. That just sounds funny when you say it, even though it is a smaller field. Yes.
Yeah, I mean it in the sense I meant smaller topic, but is it weird to you? And I know that a lot of Huskies fans will get joined this. So Minnesota won the Big Ten. They have not played since February 26th. They get a bye in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, and they will not play until the 12th in their respective matchup.
Weekend, yep.
There's a couple of other, you've got some playoff formats in leagues past that have kind of worked in similar fashion. Does it make any sense for the number one seed to end up getting a bye into the tournament? Or if you have a disparity for, moving forward where you have an odd number of teams, for example, 7 teams instead of 8, does it make more sense to just bounce the last team or have a play-in between the last 2 teams? Because if I'm the number one seed, I know obviously you're increasing the chance to potentially have an upset, but I don't know that I want to be sitting on the shelf for 2 weeks before I'm thrust into tournament time and, playoff time for my particular conference. I don't know that that bodes well for anybody.
No, but I don't like the worst team not getting a chance to play.
So have a play-in game.
Maybe you take the bottom 2 and you have a play-in game beforehand. But even then, you're still almost saying that, it's been tough and now you got to fight even more. I don't know. There really is no perfect answer to that question. Because like you said, if you're going to have either one of those squads take the number one seed. And again, as most hockey players and coaches will tell you, you don't want to be sitting for 2 weeks. You want to be playing. And no matter who gets thrown at your doorstep in terms of, the team, whether it's the 7th place team or the 8th place team, right? You got to take care of your business yourself, right? Just ask AIC, just ask Air Force. So, yes, I am triggering people already on a Sunday. That's fine. But still, it's one of those where, the time off can also be a blessing too. Just, you never know what's actually happening, what guys are playing through injuries or if, they're tired. So sometimes, the right break at the right time can also, mean a positive difference. It just depends on the team and the timing, right? So for that, I think instinctually you want to play, but you also, maybe Minnesota is as good as they have been. Now, granted, I am going to say this. You beat Michigan State, you beat Ohio State, and then you beat Wisconsin. For my last check on the pairwise, those teams are pretty low, but they still take care of business. I'm still not convinced the Gophers are a deep playoff team. I'm still not convinced of that. I think Justin Close and the loss of Jack LaFontaine actually has forced that team to play a better cohesive style, especially defensively, to try to help out their goaltender. So I think that has been a blessing in disguise for them. And they've got some game breaker type talent, and Matthew Nyes and Ben Myers, of course, down the middle has been really good for them. Let's not forget Brock Faber in the back end, but at the end of it.
So you talk about the fragility of that team, so to speak, obviously, with the mix of players that have come and gone, and also that, I mean, if you're Minnesota, do you want to be sitting on the shelf for 2 weeks? I mean, is it fair for the number one seed to essentially
I don't think you care.
To essentially
I don't think you care.
Unless you're banged up, to come in cold.
Well, you're right, but at the end of it, you don't control it. Right. As much as, we gave Bob Mosko, grief for the NCAA tournament and how they felt that they were the late game and then having the short turnaround to face Minnesota State. And, that's why they couldn't win. Come on. We both know it's BS. At the end of the day, you don't control the format. You have to control how you respond and how you prepare for it. And again, I think if you're healthy, you would rather play. But again, even if you're not, you're given the schedule what you are. Look what St. Cloud had to deal with, for 2 weeks here in March, where you had to do 3 games, in a week. And if you really count for it, it's almost 4 because you do a Friday, Saturday game. Then you have essentially a day and a half off. Then you play a Tuesday. Then you go either on the road or you're at home again for another 2 game set.
But didn't you just answer your own question? Look at St.
No.
Cloud, who had 3 weeks off, played 2 games, had another 3 weeks off, had a good showing against Miami, and they got their doors blown off for 2 straight weeks. You know what I mean?
But I don't think that's necessarily a direct correlation to.
I do.
Well,
110% I do.
I don't think no, because you could claim rest a little bit, maybe a little bit, but if you talk to any coach, you talk to any player, that's not an excuse. I mean, you're going out there and you got to go out there and you got to go out and prepare. You got to play the game, and I don't know. I don't think really it's that directly correlated. I think you make it seem out to be. I really don't.
Well, I'm not saying you still don't have to go out and play hockey and perform, but I still think St. Cloud probably would have had a much better start to the season after they had 3 weeks off where they were playing really well, split against North Dakota, came back, played a pretty decent series against Bemidji State. If it's me, and I won 3 of my last 4, I'm definitely wanting to play more hockey right away and continue to feel like I'm in that constant rhythm. But, hockey players are creatures of habit. They're creatures of routine, and by design, the Big Ten playoffs, the NCHC playoffs, and moreover, the NCAA tournament is a disruption in that routine in general, just because of the way tournament time is. Tournament time, even as a kid, when you're playing in your own respective playoff, tournament time has a different feel. It has a different vibe, and I think that's why we see so many upsets, because it is a change from that routine. It is a change from the norm for a lot of these teams. So part of it, is adjustment, but at the same time, knowing that you're a number 1 seed where maybe you're getting a team that somehow, pulled an upset and won both games against a higher seed, and now you've got to, come in and you haven't played in 2 weeks. I think it does make a difference because you aren't in game shape per se. Obviously, you're still in game shape. You're going to practice hard. The coaches are going to have you ready, but I still think there is something to be said for what is it? FOMO, fear of missing out, in some senses. Kind of just not being the lone team that doesn't play, for example, in the Big Ten tournament. I don't know. I think it's odd.
But is that more playing the game, or is that more just what people would call mental strength?
But hockey's mental. Hockey's as much mental as it is physical. I think it can easily be remedied by flipping it and having the number 1 seed play and having the bottom 2 teams either have a play-in game or bounce the 7th seed. You're the 7th seed in the Big Ten tournament. Why are we rewarding the last team or whatever? We love the drama. We love the potential upset, but why are we rewarding the last team for being in last place?
I don't know if you're rewarding them because what if you would ask the teams, let's just say Gophers 2 years ago.
So add another
they're
team to the Big
the
Ten.
7th. No, hold on here. If you ask each of these teams, would you rather play? Would you rather miss? If you ask them when they're the first place team versus if they're the worst place team, I bet you they're going to have different answers. Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know if it's rewarding or you're hurting one team. Again, there is no perfect solution here. There really isn't. And I think at the end of it, it's up to the coaching staff, it's up to the players to understand that, hey, with the number 1 seed in a conference tournament like the Big Ten, that means, hey, you have to look at it and frame it as a positive. Hey, we're going to get a week of rest. But guess what? That week of rest is not really rest. That means we're not going to be playing opponents. But guess what? We're still going to prep as if a game week. We're still going to have to go out there and making sure that we're playing practice like we play, right? It's up to you to prepare for that. And at the end of it, when the puck drops, come whenever that first game is in the tournament, you got to be ready for it. And again, there's nothing you can do to control the schedule. And I would bane to ask these coaches, when they were at different points of the season, if they would have it differently. I bet the answers would be different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the other thing too, as we talk about, the disparity in some of these conferences carrying 12, 13 teams, could another team join the Big Ten? I know the Big Ten is kind of exclusive in the way that conference works a little bit. It's called the Big Ten for a reason. But I think 8 teams definitely be better served as 7. The NCHC quite obviously has a very good formula for the way that they do things. Obviously, I like it in that respect because you have 4 different matchups that all move into 2 different matchups in St. Paul that leads into a championship game in St. Paul. It works very well. But after that, after all the playoffs are all said and done, Nick, we have this cool thing called the round of 16 and the NCAA tournament. The only thing is 3 of those regionals are going to be out east. The only one out west this year is in Loveland, Colorado, and they're all at neutral sites. We did a poll, the Huskies Warming House podcast did on Twitter. And thank you to everyone who participated. We had 208 total votes on this one. And the question did read, should NCAA ice hockey change the format to where the top 4 pairwise teams host their regional this upcoming year? It was at that point, it was currently Mankato, Michigan, Denver, and Minnesota. It still is to this point. And it used to be where the higher seeds did host their own regional site. 75% of pollers said yes, it should be moved back to where the top 4 seeds in the country do host the respective regional. 25% of our listeners said no. So Nick, I got to be honest, I was expecting it to maybe even be even higher than that. But that's 156 people that said that it should be at the home site of whatever the higher seed is. I expected it to be even higher. Is there a case for this, or has the NCAA gotten this right where the regionals should be at neutral sites at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday on TV?
I'm torn by this, honestly. And here's why I'm torn. Now, you talk about, just like in our last topic, rewarding, say, the teams that are performing well, right? At the end of the day, there's a reason why they call it Selection Sunday. You're being selected to do it. There's nothing that says the pairwise is what determines, there's a objective reality who the total's top 4 teams are. So what you end up doing is you end up possibly having this debate of, if you have a very stacked top 5, top 6, to go, well, why was this team picked as the number 4? Now they get those. Why the hell don't we? Kind of thing. The other thing is, is it the whole idea of neutral sites, especially if the NCAA, like, you're trying to not give a team an advantage, as they go toward the Frozen Four, and so I don't mind the thought of teams hosting it, because I do think that there's something to be said about fan bases and growing the game, and I completely agree with that. But you're talking about a national tournament. And, if I'm a team, say St. Cloud, which is right now positioned to be a 2 or a 3 seed right now. I think it would be a 2 seed actually right now. At the end of it, if I'm in the same regional as North Dakota and I have to travel to the Ralph, where historically I've not done well, we're really having the same disparity in voting. Am I a team that's going to go, well, no kidding, like, this is a tough place to play. We play here all the time in the regular season. This is tough, and now it's a one-off game. So there's both sides to this, and I'm not sure. I like the idea of it just because I think it engages the fans. However, when you break it down, I don't think that you can claim a fair tournament for those hosts if they have home ice advantage. It's just, to me, I don't know, it's tough. So I'm torn on it. Just because, again, like those, and I think what I saw a comment on it was, whereas someone said, well, what about the smaller schools out east that got smaller barns? And what about, again, the revenue from the NCAA? That's part of why they've gone to neutral sites. Even though, to me, I think business-wise, they probably get a better deal with their own schools. Maybe not. I could be wrong.
No, nobody shows up to the regionals.
I know. Scheduling is one thing. Scheduling's one thing.
And my question is, too, why do you not have 2 regionals out west and 2 regionals out east? Like,
that's
for example, this year, why is there a difference? Part of me is like, okay, you have 59 moving into 60 teams in college hockey, right?
Right.
Why are you not rewarding the top 4 for getting the job done? And you mentioned your point, which is a very valid point about how that might change. For example, Denver might come into the NCHC tournament and get bounced by Miami, and suddenly that changes their pairwise quite a bit and changes the selection. But do we have a cutoff date where we say, hey, at this particular point, at the end of the regular season, or at this particular point, if you're in the top 4, you're going to prepare for your regional, because knowing, even if Denver does get bounced by Miami, Denver's not going to drop to 18 all of a sudden. It's not going to be a huge jump backwards. You know what I'm saying?
No, but let's say they're in 4 and then they get bounced and they drop to 5. And here's the other thing. How do you plan for that? If you're the NCAA, you're looking at rink availability, when you're looking at the logistics of it, that's a nightmare. Right. Mm-hmm. So because, let's talk about ESPN. Last couple of years has taken on some of those regional broadcasts. For those who don't know, ESPN, just to drive a production truck out to a site is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost. just to drive the truck out there. That's not paying the talent that's going to be on camera. That's not to pay the production people who are running everything in the back end. I mean, you're talking over $500,000 for that operation just to get to a location. And so, there's a huge planning and logistics problem with that scenario. And I think that's part of why the neutral sites are what they are is, they want to be able to broadcast these games. And let's just say, again, it's North Dakota. North Dakota, we know, has broadcast capabilities. Some of these other schools, they don't. That's the other part of it too. So that, that's extra cost, is extra labor to get ready. All of a sudden, North Dakota, I mean, you're planning to go up there. All of a sudden, they get bounced in the first round by, let's say it's Miami again, right? Now, all of a sudden, that 4 seed that was going to host is now, let's say it's St. Cloud, and now let's say it's either at the Herb or, hey, let's just say neutral, saying, say the XL Energy Center in St. Paul. That's a completely different change in the travel and logistics, and I just don't think the NCAA wants to deal with that change. And again, it's going to be a subjective call. The pairways doesn't ultimately determine who gets those top 4. So you're taking something that is supposed to be on the surface objective and then what's not, and determining the top 4 seeds, and they get to host. To me, that creates more debate, that creates more controversy, and I just think the neutral sites are the easiest way to go. Again, there's so many other variables that we forget about of how these things actually work, and I think ultimately also for the game, they just need to choose better regional sites. Really is what it comes down to. Like you said, Loveland, Colorado, fine, but 3 out east. Again, there's so many teams in the West. Again, you can't predict how the teams are going to perform. I would be curious actually to know as to how far in advance the regionals are actually picked. Is it a couple years prior?
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. The one kind of counter argument, and a lot of people have said, I mean, because it used to be where the top team, the game was in their own building. And, that's what a lot of people are saying. It used to be that way, Nick. Cool. Why is there not an argument for it? Why can't we go back to that? Why was that format unsuccessful?
Well, obviously it had to have been. It's like, because I think what ended up happening, there's a competitive advantage. You're the number 1 seed, and I get, you've earned it, but again, the selection committee is a subjective thing. They're not basing it totally off pairwise. Again, we talked about this last week or the week prior. Some of these teams like BU, could they sneak in? Is Michigan Tech at 11 at one point? If they drop that game, are they going to drop down? What's the selection going to be like? So, example of 6 teams out of the top 16 somehow pull upsets and make an auto bid for the conference tournament. That means only 10 spots are available. And so how does this all work, right? And that's sort of the game you play with the way the field is. It's 16. I would say if you're going to have a team host, you need to expand the playoffs. You need to expand it to, I think, at least 24, if not 28 teams, and create another round out of it. That's kind of where I'm at with it, because then it's like, okay, you get them a little bit of advantage for the first, and then you go to neutral sites for the quarterfinals or whatnot. But that's just, I don't know. But then you're incurring more costs by doing that. So I don't know.
So how much time is enough time? A reason I asked this question, could you start the hockey season earlier and have a week in between there where you are able to make that selection, be able to, get the logistics down and be able to get those sites ready for the respective and say, yep, Mankato, Michigan, Denver, Minnesota, you're going to be hosting the 4. Here's the regionals. Make sure your arenas are ready. Is there in your mind, if NCAA hockey said, all right, we're going to pull the trigger, we're going to give this a try, we're going to have 4 sites for one of these teams on the board that's going to be in the big dance to host these hockey games, how would you do it from a logistical, from a fan standpoint? What is the recipe where they could change this and make it work?
If you want the top 4 teams to host, so it starts a little bit differently, right? Because let's just say it's at North Dakota. North Dakota's got all the internal broadcasting equipment. That's easy, right? You're driving a truck, you're done. But let's go out east to some of these older buildings that don't have it. Or let's just say St. Thomas surprises the hockey world. They don't even have a freaking building yet. Now what do you do? Right? So let's be honest here. That's a problem. And so it's not that you need a week, like more than a week to decide it. It's not an issue of timing. I think the bigger question is the NCAA ready to fork out the money that it would take to do all the broadcasting and then be able to be in a building where they can recoup that cost? That's really what it is.
So
but if you're not going to count cost, right, and you're just going to say first, you don't change a thing. You just say, all right, you say at end of regular season, that's what determines the top 4 seeds. The selection committees determines the top 4 seeds. But then again, so much can ride on the pairwise in the conference tournament. Some teams could be in the bubble or not. So I don't know how you do it, but I don't know.
Well, like I said, if you're at the top 4 before your conference tournament at the end of the regular season, or at a specific point when the regular season ends for most teams, even if you get upset in the first round of your respective tournament, you're still going to be in the tournament. And part of me is like, okay, well, you've earned it through the regular season, even if you had a mishap going on in the playoffs. I mean, for the majority of the season, you were a top 4 team. The other question is this. Do you do it where you could look and you could rank venues based on those access capabilities, or kind of put them into tiers? So, for example, tier 1 would be your cream of the crops, right? Your AMSOIL arenas, your Ralph Engelstad arenas, places like that can hold broadcast capabilities. Maybe Baxter Arena might even be one that
Baxter would do it.
Yeah, fits the bill because of the broadcast capabilities. Or is there a fan piece that you're throwing in there where now one arena that might seem so good suddenly isn't, but you have them in tiers where you say, okay, these are the sites that we have. But if you're St. Thomas, maybe your regional is now in Mankato, just simply because of that. You know what I'm saying? Or it's at a neutral site that's close to your location. So,
or
for example,
Mariucci, right?
Yeah. Or if it works out, which I know is a logistical nightmare because of the NHL, but the Xcel Energy Center, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I think that's actually the best compromise is you find neutral sites that are close to it. So like for North Dakota, you would go to Fargo. As much as we've had ice problems there, they've done it before. Whether the venue was big enough, I think with the crowd levels I saw last time, it was totally big enough. Say Denver is one. I mean, you have Magnus, which would be fine. Or do you go over to the Pepsi Center in Denver, or do you go to Baxter? Right, Baxter I think would be a fair venue. There's plenty out east. I'm not too worried about the out east school. So I think there is something to be said about a neutral site that would be close to the home. But I think, just for me, again, for the competitive edge, I think you want to take away at least exactly the home building, but do a neutral site that's close, that can handle it all. And I think, like you said, you would rank, you would have the tiers, and you would have the ability to know that you could get a good size crowd. And again, with it being in driving distance, you would get a fan base that travels. North Dakota fans travel like a virus, so it's fine anyway. They'll go to freaking Nashville if they had to. So I think that's what you ended up having to do. And I think that would be probably the best compromise to do it.
Yeah. Right now, for the time being, there should be 2 regionals in the West, 2 in the East. That's the first change that should be happening. But I think if you're going to rank things on tiers, I think a couple of criteria that you have to have. First has to be capacity, quite obviously. I would say a building that holds at least 5,000 people.
100%.
So, for example, you mentioned Shields Arena in Fargo. Shields Arena holds about 6,500 plus standing. So that's it's a perfect size, I think, for a lot of tournaments in that regard. Number 2, broadcast capabilities. Are they able to, be available in terms of all those access points and all the logistical side of things too? Number 3, I think probably has to come down a little bit to something fan interaction related, right?
Proximity.
Like do you have hotels? Do you have hotels for the teams? Do you have all those things related to fan interest that you can set up, or even NCAA kiosks for people who want to get t-shirts, things like that, like little logistical things that go into that. And then the other piece that I was also going to mention too, and I for some reason it escapes me. I just had it in my head. There's another piece to this too that's important. I can't think of what it is, Nick. I just had it in my head. It will come to me. I know it will come to me. But capacity, broadcast capabilities, fan interest. There's another. Arena availability. Quite obviously, do you have an arena that, like, yes, you have the Shields Arena, but Shields Arena is the home of the Fargo Force in the USHL. So do you have that time blocked? Or do you have an idea, do you have a committee that meets in January that kind of looks at, okay, here are the top 8 teams in the pairwise now, some of these locations for this, and this, this tier 1 location, this tier 1 location, this tier 2 location, and this tier 1 location should really be on standby because it's looking like these are probably going to be the best options for us, and maybe determine it not so far out in advance, and maybe really try to determine it as best you can during the course of a season and try to work with some of those partners. It makes it more challenging, but I think
more expensive.
I think it's something that in the end pays for itself. If you have a regional where, like you said, North Dakota, Duluth, Quinnipiac, and UMass Lowell, but that regional is in Fargo. And then St. Cloud's regional has St. Cloud, Denver, somebody else, and that one's in Baxter and Omaha. I know a lot of people in St. Cloud and a lot of people in Denver that would both travel to that regional. You know what I'm saying? So, and
that's the argument for keeping it in a college barn, as you know what's going to be available. You know that the majority of them are broadcast capable. And again, it's not like you would have to go in, because that's the thing about those neutral sites. It's not like you can block them off and say, hey, we may or may not come. No, again, the NCHC, for those who follow, for us, they determine their schedule December, January for next year. It's already done. So, in the NHL and different venues, I mean, again, it's a year to 18 months for them, trying to book events. So, that's the one caveat to those neutral sites, is that. Now, again, would it be something where I would support, say, if St. Cloud was a top 4 seed, and instead of having it in the Herb, you travel just down the road a little bit to Mariucci and have that happen? I'm totally in favor of that. Against a college barn, it's close in proximity, kind of thing.
The other question is too, and this makes it a challenge because we talk about conference disparity. The NCHA has the potential to pull 5 teams to the tournament, maybe even 6 if you have an upset. By the way, for those who are curious, it's now 18 that Omaha has jumped to. So a good showing in the NCHC tournament could go a long way, which should be good when they beat Western Michigan. But besides that, do you also have it? And maybe this is more of a challenge for a league like the NCHC as opposed to a team out east. But do you have a maximum of 4 sites per conference? So if your top 4 seeds are all NCHC teams, you have 4 buildings in mind for NCHC teams. So for example, you rank them on 1 to 4. Building number 1 is the first site that any NCHC team goes to. So if there's only one NCHC team in the top 4, they go to building 1, all the way down to building 4 if needed. Same with every other league or every other conference, all the way through Atlantic Hockey, Hockey East. And if the top 4 teams fall in any of those respective places, then that those buildings are going to be selected each year for the Big Ten team that makes the top 4, the NCHC team that makes the top 4. If there's 2 Hockey East teams that make it that year, you have 2 buildings, and you have 4 buildings for each particular conference that is able to anticipate a potential top 4 finish for any of their teams in there. I mean, is that something? And you can still rank them based on the criteria of capacity, broadcast capability, fan interest and engagement, hotels, etc., and arena availability that you can all handle, and still do that within the realm of making that decision in what would be a shortened timeline compared to how they select the regionals now. I mean, is that something that would make sense? Or
it could, but again, it's still like any venue. There's time to prep for that type of venue, again, because you have advertisements that got to be changed on boards. The NCAA, and again, as when you go inside of a building, everything is covered. That's the boards, that's the ads on the walls. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. That takes time. And again, a lot of those little ads and whatnot, they're custom built, they're custom made. So that's the tough part, is how do you do that with the arena? You have no idea what the specs are until that late. And I think that's partly why it's, again, follow the money. That's where this all comes down to, as to why they've gone to these neutral sites, is because they need that time to prep, to make sure that everything is in working order, that they have time to set up, and again, that they can really change over. I remember when we went up to Fargo a couple of years ago to call that blunder of a hockey game, unfortunately for the Huskies. Again, the NCAA, I mean, they go into a building, it's taken over. I mean, it's completely rebranded, essentially. There's so much that goes into that in such a short amount of time. If only the ice was in better situation, but that's a whole different topic. So again, I think there's just way too many logistical challenges when you get into the nitty gritty details that really prevent that from happening. And for the neutral sites, I think, again, this year's a perfect example. I don't disagree with you on that. How is there 3 within 150-mile stretch? It's what it seems like. Allentown, Worcester, and Albany, isn't it? Yeah, Albany. And then it's like, the one person that's outside the friend group, and then over here in Loveland, Colorado, just on the outside looking in, like we're over here too, right? It's bizarre. And if they are going to make changes, it's something that's going to have to happen over the course of time, and it's not going to be immediate turnover. And it's just, I don't know. I think for them to move back away from what they're doing now would be exceptionally tough, because it does open up a lot of opportunities for advanced preparation and things of that nature. But you do wonder the selection committee's choice of venues. You do wonder, the crowding out east, when, especially this year, there's going to be very little hockey east teams involved. So I don't know.
I don't know why I enjoyed that chuckle. I enjoyed it a lot more than I should have. But...
No, it's true though. And again, nobody can predict how the teams are going to play and who may be the surprise, in college hockey.
I mean, the most logical thing, Nick, is to put all 4 regionals in Massachusetts, because it is the state of hockey.
That's really where we're trying to get at here.
I have one more topic that I want to discuss very quickly. It's a very short one, and you'll understand as soon as I say it. But before that, I want to have a little bit of fun with one particular question.
Sure.
Nick, you take over the NCAA and you say it's Nick's way or the highway. We're not getting any vowels. We're not getting any stakes in Pittsburgh. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to pick 4 hockey rinks for the next 5 years that all the regionals are going to go to every single year from all the teams in college hockey. I know there's a lot of cool rinks like Vermont, but doesn't have a lot of capacity. What are your 4 buildings in college hockey that you are hosting the regionals? Your head, you're like, oh my God. If you had to pick a college hockey building, where are 4 buildings that you would put the regionals for the next 5 years?
And they have to be a college hockey building.
They have to be a college, so you can't pick the XL Energy Center.
Mother trucker. Oh boy.
Well, let's get the obvious one out of the way. If you don't say this, you should be shot. It's an NCHC building.
You were talking about the Ralph, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess we'll give the Ralph one. I want to say Baxter.
Okay.
I want to say Baxter just because
you're going to go with another NCHC building. Okay.
Right. I am, just because it's got the capacity, it's got the broadcast, it's got great fan interaction. And since I can't pick any of the other buildings, so here we go. Out east, who am I?
Yeah, it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a particular location. Like, can just be any building.
No, I know. I'm just trying to, because again, I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is, and that is I want 2 out west, 2 out east. Oh, jeez. Michigan's not far enough east. Neither is Notre Dame. Oh gosh, thanks for putting me in the spot. Thank you very much for this.
You're welcome. It's a hard question. Most of mine are in the West, so I'm going to be that guy. But
yeah, I would say you probably give it to UMass, and then you give it to Boston, BU.
Yeah, how far do you feel Compton Family Ice Arena in Notre Dame is? Is that far enough out east for you? It's a pretty cool little building. I don't know.
It is, but capacity, I think, is the bigger issue.
Yeah, capacity. Kohl Center,
BU for sure.
Anymore, but
no, not Wisconsin. I don't want anything in Wisconsin. Neither does anybody else. So, but Boston for sure. And then I'm trying to think of one of the other ones that are out there.
There's not a lot of big buildings out there.
That's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem, is when I'm trying to think of, size.
How about Miami, Ohio? Yeah, I mean, that's
maybe.
It's not a bad little building.
It's not, but Miami just can't have nice things as of recently. So
you know who actually has an underrated building? Actually, is RIT. I
was actually going to say RIT.
Yeah, they have a really underrated building. So for me,
sure, let's do that.
Ralph Engelstad, quite obviously. Yost Ice Arena, gotta have a game at Yost. I think that
Yost is iconic. Yeah,
I think that Michigan venue is too difficult to pass up. I'm going to stay a little bit out in the west here. Amsoil Arena. I think Amsoil would be a fantastic location for a regional, just because you do have the broadcast capabilities. A lot of press boxes. Is the perfect size for a college hockey game. It's not too
getting
big,
there might be
small.
A problem, but that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. The hotel situation would probably be really difficult. It's the 4th one that I think is a challenge. I got to be honest. I mean, I really like Miami, a little bit of a small building. RIT's building is kind of nice. I suppose you probably want one out east. Yeah, BU. I mean, that building is big
BU,
enough
yeah.
to probably have it. So BU, I'd probably say was my fourth one. But my final topic, speaking of hockey, you mentioned Baxter Arena. This one's kind of a sad story, Nick, that we pulled out yesterday. Unfortunately, I think we do have to talk about this very quickly. And I want to read the tweets that were kind of direct here because I thought it was well covered. I've got a couple of them. This one comes from @Mavpuck, who follows us on Twitter, who does a very good job, and he said, "Quote: Our understanding is that an elderly fan was pushed down the stairs by a UND hockey fan in one of the sections. Police were on scene. The full story from an eyewitness is that a drunk North Dakota fan had been taunting, saying Omaha is irrelevant, to which the elderly Omaha fan turned back and said, well, saying Sioux is racist. Of course, North Dakota used to be the Fighting Sioux, which set off one of the North Dakota fans who charged down four rows, pushing the elderly fan intentionally on the right side of the staircase. So he went over the aisle divider, over the railing, 2 rows of fans, and over the barrier railing under the concrete, which is about 6 feet below that barrier railing. So then after that, he was actually pretty close to falling over actually the front railing that separates the upper and lower bowl at Baxter.
Yeah.
So his granddaughter obviously had been in the restroom and came back to find that there was a pretty bad laceration of the head. And it was actually his wife that posted an update that said that was her husband. He's not elderly, just has wonderful silver hair, so we'll give it to him.
That was a great quote, actually.
Yeah. So as of now, as of Sunday, he's still in the hospital. It does have a laceration of the scalp that took 3 hours to close, but was pretty gruesome to show. So obviously, the North Dakota fan apprehended by police and taken into custody. No further things have come out of that. But Nick, why is it always North Dakota fans?
Oh, Jesus.
And why? Who in their right mind, has this plan? And this goes back to another question. My dad brought this up to me last night when I said it to him, and I don't know how right he is. I know it's a money grab, so that's the first thing I'm going to put out there. But it used to be where alcohol was never served at college hockey rinks, even at 3M Arena at Mariucci. It used to be where alcohol was never served.
Correct.
Now it is. I understand it's a money grab. For example, the Minotauros, where I worked yesterday, they had 1,900 people in the building and made over $5,000 on alcohol last night. I totally understand it. Okay. But with that being said, I mean, what is your assessment of the situation? And does this have an alcohol-based thing where maybe hockey rinks should maybe start to think about fans that are consuming a lot and maybe have the potential for something like this?
So here comes my lawyer brain. I'm about to blow your question completely out of context because it was improperly placed. We'll put it that way.
Well, thanks, Nick. It's a hockey podcast, but anyway.
It's okay. So first of all, we have no way to confirm whether those allegations are indeed accurate. As much as I hate to say it, I'm not calling anybody liars or anything, but we have no way to know if that was the actual story.
Yeah, so you do a breathalyzer test with the police as they walk you out of the building. But...
Yep, sure. But again, it's okay. So if indeed those allegations are true, this is not a story about North Dakota fans as general. Let's be, this is a story of somebody having a verbal match, getting triggered, and then making the individual decision to turn a verbal altercation into violence. That's what has to be completely said here. Number two, the alcohol thing doesn't pertain, and you cannot tell me that these people aren't pre-gaming outside the arena, meaning at local bars or whatnot. So the question is, not that college hockey venues are serving alcohol, and that is whoever is serving alcohol, whether it's restaurants or the arena, are they properly serving and not over serving? That's the bigger thing. And then for, again, the individual responsibility part says, if you're feeling it, maybe slow down a little bit, right? At the end of it, I mean, there's a passionate fan base in North Dakota. There's no question about it. But again, one thing about college hockey is the rivalries. It's that fun banter, to trash talk and whatnot. And it's all good and fun until this happens. If that was indeed, Sue's racist and everything, and that's what set him off. Okay, but you're really going to go down how many flights of stairs and then 4 rows and push somebody that, Noah, you're a nurse. If someone does fall down a certain, and sometimes you don't even have to fall that much. You hit something or hit your head a certain way. I mean, you're talking, some major problems. And now instead of talking about assault, we're talking about, maybe manslaughter charges.
Yeah.
So it's just about, being the heat of the moment. Again, we can have the conversation. We're all adults. We all know that alcohol can, just messes up your judgment. But I'm not ready to say this is North Dakota fans. I get they have a history. I get they have this mantra about them, but I'm not trying to group them all into one. I want to make sure that we focus on the one person that actually decided to go and actually make this action, and that person should be damned and ashamed and sorry for what he has done. And that person does not deserve to be inside Baxter Arena ever again. Or any college, or any NCHC arena. So I do hope that if the story does in fact be confirmed that these events that we're being told are happened exactly like they were, then I do hope that their proper the consequences are laid out to this individual, and they hope that person does realize that stupid, dangerous, I think is another word, and just completely inappropriate and irresponsible.
Yeah, that's always been my biggest fear. I mean, Ralph Nicholson Arena is a prime example. Obviously, they have the low glass that sits on the upper bowl, but I mean, it's not
bulletproof glass.
And it's not unfathomable for somebody to go over top of that and end up landing on people in the lower bowls and lower concourses too. So, wishing obviously that man a speedy recovery, and hopefully he gets out of the hospital soon. I mean, that's just head injuries they're not great, obviously. No. And the fact too is, and I can't believe this needs to be said on our podcast here as we get ready to close out the show, but when you go to a hockey game, regardless of if you agree or disagree with the fan next to you, be civil, be polite, enjoy the game. It's just hockey. Don't push people down rows of stairs or over railings. I got to be honest. And I mean, there's been times, I mean, I get it. I was a player. I get it. Tensions get high, but
you're on the ice and on the stands.
Yeah. At no point have I ever sat in the stands of a hockey rink and said, now would be a good time to do this. You know what I mean? So just be civil, use your head, obviously. And hopefully we can all get along. Omaha, it's very fun to see their fan base, by the way, a fantastic program, what they've built in the NCHC. UNO was kind of I don't want to say second rate, but kind of a forgotten team in a lot of senses in the college hockey world. And then coming to the NCHC has really made a prominent name for themselves in the past decade or so. So it's good to see that North Dakota fans do feel a little bit triggered by Omaha fans because they know that they're a threat and that their team continues to get better and better. And we'll have to see how they fare against Western Michigan. North Dakota has Colorado College, Denver, Miami in the NCHC playoffs. And hey, St. Cloud State and Duluth are going to meet for the 7 billionth time in 2 years in some playoff hockey action. We were actually trying to figure out what the most consecutive number of games played between two college hockey opponents was. I wouldn't be shocked if it's probably 5. And
that would make sense. Maybe 4 or 5, maybe.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if it was 6. But 5 is probably it. And the Huskies and Bulldogs could be set for another matchup that would take them all the way to, once again, potentially 7 total games in the season where they meet just like last year. We'll keep you up to date, and we'll be back either on Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday morning at the latest for episode number 103.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Permix!
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL!
Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.